I'm Jamie from Not So Wimpy Teacher, and I'm doing a video series for you about how I taught math. So I already have videos about what Math Workshop is and the components you need for a successful Math Workshop. I talked about the whole group lesson in one of my videos, and then I did a lesson all about the small group lessons that you can do with your students to help them to grow. Yesterday I talked about math center schedules, and I talked about in that video about how I have 4 groups, but I only do 2 rotations per day so that I can have longer to meet with each of my groups, waste less time on transitions. And I promised in today's video that I would discuss the different center activities that my students do in their rotations. So that's what today's video is all about the different activities my students did during their math centers. So let's get started. All right, this is that Math Workshop model we've been talking about, where we start with our mini lesson and then we spend the bulk of our math time doing small groups and centers. So I would do 2 30-minute rotations. If you have a smaller, shorter math block, you might be doing 2 20-minute rotations. But I do have 4 groups, so I have a total of 4 rotations. It's just they're only going to complete 2 each day. These were the rotations that I ended up settling on after trying a lot of different things, actually. This is what I ended up really liking. I have, of course, a Meet the Teacher rotation. Every student's in a small group that meets with me twice a week. I have a technology rotation, another rotation that I called Independent. It's not a very creative name. You could name it something else if you wanted to, but I don't name my centers with acronyms like math, math facts, and at your seat teacher. I don't do that. One, because I don't have an at your seat center. I like my kids to be allowed to work wherever they're most comfortable. And secondly, I hate naming a center just for the sake of fitting it into an acronym rather than just naming it what it really is. It helps my students more if I just call it what it is. And so I called it Independent because that was center and they knew they had to do it all by themselves. And then the other center rotation that I used was math facts. So I'm going to go into more detail about the technology, independent, and math facts. I'm not going to talk about Meet the Teacher again because I already did a whole video about that. So if you missed that one, make sure you head back to that video. Let's start with technology. I was not one-to-one. I did not have technology or every student to be on at a time, but that's what made groups good because I did have 6 Chromebooks and I was able to use those during center. So if you have any type of technology that you could use during a center, this would be a good rotation for you. If you don't have any technology at your disposal, you might change this center out for something like an interactive notebook rotation. All right, these were just some websites I thought of, and I've used some of them, most of them, with my students. My school did purchase iReady. You know, it has its pluses, it has its negatives, just like any site. But it was something that was differentiated to my students' level, and so they worked wherever they were at. So just because we were doing division in class didn't mean they were doing division lessons in technology, and that's fine. That's what makes the center more valuable for them because they're doing what they need to do. And if addition's where they need to be, then that particular program would start them there. So Zern. I really liked Zern. Zern goes along with the Eureka Engage New York curriculum, and so the computer lessons kind of mimic their strategies, and that was really nice. Again, I let students work at their own pace instead of like assigning the lesson and telling them they had to complete it that week and then checking. I don't have time for that. And to be real honest with you, the best part about center rotations is that it's differentiated. And so all my students aren't working on the same Zern lesson at the same time or the same pace, but they're working on a lesson that they need at their pace. MobyMax is another good one. I used the free version. My kids really enjoyed it. So that one was another one where you can choose math or reading, and you can choose different domains, and they work through it at their own pace. Extra Math is really just for math facts, and so you could choose to do that during your technology center too. It really only takes 5 minutes. So it might be one of those things where you have your kids do their extra math and then log into MobyMax, or do your extra math and then log into Zern or whatever, just so that they are getting extra practice with those math facts. I really like extra math for math facts. It's differentiated again. The kids take like an assessment. It figures out which facts they know and don't know, and then it introduces the facts that they don't know, introduces them to them in practice, and continues to assess them until they know them. I really liked the program, and so did my kids, especially since they only do it for 5 minutes, and then it's like, you're done. Prodigy is one I haven't tried before, but it's one that's been recommended a lot in my Facebook groups, and I did go to the site, and it looks very similar to something like MobyMac. So these were just some ideas, and I know your schools might buy licenses for others. So if you have technology, this will be a great time to use it in a center, okay? I went ahead and made this one of my rotations. Kids just like technology naturally, and so it was easy to get them engaged in this rotation. All right, math facts. Math facts can be a little bit boring, okay? But I wanted my center rotation for math facts to be fun. You can, if you have like worksheets that they do, you can have them do those. You could have them do some of that like timing yourself and drilling yourself. Maybe that's the first part they do. But I did like to mix in some games into my math fact centers. And one thing I would suggest is just to teach a game and introduce it into the center, and then wait a while to teach a new one. So you're not wasting a lot of class time teaching a whole bunch of games at once that they forget the rules too. I also suggest that you practice these games whole group before you just put it in a center, especially at the beginning of the year. Later in the year, you can typically just teach a new game and throw it in there. Or you can even teach the game during your small group time, if you would prefer. But maybe it's something you teach during a brain break time. It doesn't even have to be in the middle of your math lesson. But here are some games that I like to use, or just some activities I like to use for math facts. First of all, flashcards. I grabbed these flashcards at Target or Walmart ages ago, and I know they have them at the dollar store. But flashcards can be a good activity to maybe start them with. I paired my kids up and taught them how I wanted them to do flashcards. I taught them that they would show the card, and if the person didn't get it quickly, they'd put it in one pile. If the person got it wrong, they put it in a pile. If it got right and fast, they put it in a different pile. And I just kind of taught them how I wanted them to go through the flashcards. And they didn't complain because we also added in some games. Okay, so some of the games that I love to play with my kids. Pop. I grabbed some popcorn bags, or they have plastic ones too, plastic like little containers. I grabbed these from the dollar store, and I have these cards that say pop. You would have multiple cards that say pop, and then you would also put some cards in there that just have math facts on them, whichever, whether you're doing addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, whatever it is. It can be 2-digit, whatever. You stick them in the bag, and you've got, you can have a small group play together or just partners. I tend to think they behave better when it's just partners. And then if you have an odd number of kids in the group, you give them permission to have a group of 3. Or you can have the whole group play together if you feel they can handle it, and some kids can. So what happens is kids take turns, and they pull a card out. If it's a math fact, they answer it. If they answer it correctly, they keep the card. If they answer it incorrectly, they put it back in the bag, and the next person grabs a card. If they pull out a pop card, they have to put all of the cards they've collected so far back in the bag. The winner is the person with the most cards when time is up, so when it's time to switch to a new rotation. The neat thing about this is it's a bit of chance and a bit of skill. You have to get the multiplication fact or the subtraction fact correct to be able to keep the card, but you can grab a pop at any time, which means even like your lower learner who's struggling a little more with his math facts can end up winning from time to time because they happen to get a fact right before the rotation changed while their partner got a pop card. And so it's kind of fun because you just really never know who's going to win. It's not like the kid who's just super fast with his multiplication facts is always going to win. There's lots of opportunity for others to win. So that's one thing I really like about this game. This one's I call Pop. Another fun thing to do this is just so simple. Throw in some like kid board games. And seriously, I've seen 3rd, 4th, 5th graders get excited about this because it's different. Grab some Candyland game boards or some Chutes and Ladders. 4 in a row is fun. Checkers are fun. Grab some of these. You can get them at used stores, secondhand stores. You can get them at garage sales. And these games also tend to be fairly inexpensive new from Walmart. So grab them and grab some flashcards. Boom, you have a math fact game. They already know how to play the board game, so it doesn't take long to teach them how to play this, which is good because you don't have a lot of time to teach how to play, right? How I use it. They have flashcards. When it is their turn, they have to answer the fact on the flashcard. If they get it correct, they get to take the normal turn on the board game, playing it how the game rules are. So if it was Candyland, then I think they pick up a card that has the colors on it that tells them where to move. So in order to earn their turn on the game board, they answer the math fact correctly. And then the winner is just, the winner of the board game, playing by the rules of the game. So all you're doing is adding in you're going to play Candyland, but in order to take a turn, you got to get a math fact correct. I also have tried Jenga, and I do love it, and I would put it in sometimes, but maybe not the first couple weeks of school, and maybe not a day you have a headache. But take a Jenga game, write math facts right on the wood blocks. They pull it out, they answer the fact, and then they put the thing on top. They're just playing Jenga, but you're making them answer math at the same time. They actually think this is really fun because you're giving them permission to play board games during math. And so they get excited about it. So look for those used board games. Ask on your Facebook page of any of your friends have board games that they're wanting to get rid of. Most people have a collection that their kids have outgrown that they might be willing to donate to your classroom too. I like to use this game. This is really fun to add. This is called 4 in a Row, and I made it, but you could easily make it too. Or I'm going to give you mine for free if you do multiplication. If you're doing addition, subtraction, or division, you'll have to make them on your own because I only have multiplication. But here's how you play. It's so simple. Pick a game board for them. Like if they were working on times 8, and this is so easy to differentiate because you can have one group doing the times 2 board and another group doing the times 8 board. You give them 2 dice. When it's their turn, they roll the dice, they add them together, and then they multiply that sum by whatever number on the board. So if they rolled a 2 and a 4, they'd add it together. It's 6. 6 times 8 is 48. So they would look for a 48 on the board. And sometimes there's multiple, but they can only choose one. So I see that there's a couple. They choose one and they color it, or you can have them cover it with a square tile, or they can, if you laminate it, they can color it with a dry erase marker. And the idea is the first person to get 4 in a row wins. It's a really simple game, but they're practicing their math facts at the same time. Okay? And they like it. You can switch it up just by simply switching out the facts. Here's a really simple idea that involves the flashcards, but makes it just a little more fun. Take your flashcards and give them 2 dice, or even just 1 if you want. After they take turns, they take a flashcard, they answer it correctly. If they answer it correctly, they get to roll the 2 dice, add them together, and that's how many points they get for getting that math fact correct. And so they can just keep tally of their points, and now they're actually adding 2, and just see who gets the most points at the end. Really, they're doing flashcards, but now you're just letting them earn points for doing the flashcards. Kids love that. And then when they roll the 2 dice and they get a 6 and an 8, they got to add that up to know, or they get a 6 and a 6, they got to add that up to know it's 12. And then they got to keep adding their points. So maybe they're adding 12 to 2 to 6, and they got to keep adding. So you're throwing in a little extra computation in there too. But it's like you're taking something that was $1, throwing in a couple dice, and just making it slightly more engaging. Also, like I mentioned when we talked about technology, you could use technology for math facts too. If you have enough technology for students in the technology rotation to be using it and to have some for math facts, it could be cool to have your kids do their extra math and then let them go play a game. I like to do that. But again, I wouldn't put a ton of games out. I would teach them one and then maybe add another, maybe pull one out and add another, just to keep it interesting. Pull a game out for a couple months and then put it back in, and it's all brand new to them. So your games can be super simple. You don't have to buy something really fancy. All right? I have free games for you. I have those 4 in a row game boards. I also have the pop cards. I even have a fidget spinner game for you. So I'm going to go ahead and put a link to that blog post in the video description. So if you're interested, you can go and grab those free math fact games. All right. So I had a rotation for technology and a rotation for math facts. My last rotation was my independent rotation. I have to say this was my most important rotation, really, and it was one of my students' favorites for sure. I used my Math Center resource for this. I have to grab the cards right behind me. Now, what was so important is that they are consistent. So we might use the multiplication set, and then later use the division set, and later use fractions, and later use measurement, but they all have the same look and feel and very similar directions. So once you really taught students how to use them, you don't waste a whole bunch of time week in and week out teaching them new center activities. But it's not just giving them like one activity and asking them to do it over and over again, because each set comes with 10 different centers. And so it keeps them engaged. They're different. There's some that are matching, some that are sorting, some you're rolling dice, some you're creating word problems, some you need to color certain numbers. They're different. It's not just a bunch of task cards, okay? So the consistency is there, and yet they're still engaging. They're still different enough to be engaging. Hope that makes sense. All right, here's like kind of a look at it. Each one of them, each set comes with a recording book, and the recording book actually has space in it to complete all 10 of the centers in that unit. So this is from a fractions unit for 3rd grade. And so the booklet is where they would store their answers for 10 centers. I generally gave my students about 3 to 4 weeks, generally about a month, to complete the 10 centers. I found that with my rotation schedule and the amount of time they had in centers, that's about how long it took the majority of my students to finish. If you have lower learners, they might take longer, and that's okay. One thing that you might do, you might cross out 2 of the centers and say, I don't want you to even worry about 5 and 6, and just have them focus on the others. That way it's differentiated for them, and they don't have to feel like they're always behind. But all 10 center activities are completed here in the one booklet. And I love that because it's easy for my students to keep track of, and I don't have to make new copies every week. This one booklet is a month of math centers, and it's really only 3 pieces of paper. So that is a score for me. 3 pieces of paper, the whole month of math centers right here in this one booklet that they keep in a math folder in their desk. If they were to lose this, they would have to redo the centers, as well as there would be some sort of consequence for me having to make a new copy. I did not have a problem with students losing these. I didn't have them ever take them home, so it really wasn't anywhere for them to go. So this worked out really well, and they got to either cross off or hole punch or put a sticker on the center once they finished it. Because here's the thing, there's choice. There's 10 different centers. There's 10, this is the fraction set for 3rd grade. There's 10 different centers in here. This isn't how I would organize it for my students, but this is rather how I have it organized on my shelf right now, not in use. Tomorrow's video is all about organizing the centers. So students could go up there and they could grab this one. This is center 6. They could do that first. And then when they're done, they could come bring it back and grab maybe center 2. They don't have to do it in order. They pick. They just come up there, grab it, take it to their desk or to the floor, wherever they're most comfortable, complete that activity in their booklet, bring it back, stick it back in the bucket, and grab one they have not already completed. So they can kind of reference the back and say, oh, I haven't done number 7 and it's here. There's 10 centers, and since I only have like 6 or 7 kids in a group, there's always one here that they can work on, even though everyone else is working independently. But they have choice, and they have direction cards on them so students can be successful without me, because I'm busy with my small group. And so that's what's so nice about them, is that they're engaging and easy enough for them to be independent. I use mine for spiral review, and I find this to make the centers even more successful. When we finish our fractions as a whole group and mini lessons and a small group, that's when I would throw fractions into my centers. So they've already learned about fractions whole group. They already had support from me small group, maybe some homework, some assessments. Fractions are not new to them, but they still need to review them. And because they've already had so many lessons, they're able to be much more independent and successful, but it's also challenging for them and keeps them on their toes thinking, okay? So I like to use the spiral. You don't have to. You could use the unit you're currently working on if you prefer. But I found that my kids were just able to be more independent if it was more of a review. So I start the year with a set called Back to School, which is actually a review of skills from the previous grade. And that way it gives me time to start my first lesson, my first unit. When I'm finished with my first unit, whatever it might be, maybe it's place value, maybe it's multiplication, then I would stick that next set in. And like I said, it takes about 3 to 4 weeks for most of my learners to finish these centers. When they are finished, I do have math menus that my fast finishers can work on, and I'll leave a link to those. But some of my kids won't finish, and that's okay. You have to make a judgment call. That they're not finishing because the skills are still genuinely difficult for them, but they worked hard. In that case, I just grade what they did complete. Did they not finish because they were messing around and not using their time wisely? In that case, I'm going to grade it, and I'm going to mark off for every one they did not complete. It will speed them up and get them more focused in the future. But I do grade this booklet at the end of the month. With your lower learners, you may even have them bring the booklet with them to small group one day so you can go through it and see if they need any support. You can always have a time during class. My time was during the bell work. I said, if you ever have a question during bell work or during snack, come ask me about it. That way I can help you, or schedule a time when I can. If I don't have time right then, I will schedule a time when I can help you. So with your lower learners, you can do that. But if it is a spiral, they tend to already be more successful because you've already taught the lessons to them. And you, again, could cross off a couple of the more higher order thinking questions. There are some where they're writing their own word problems, and maybe like that one might be really challenging for them, and you just know it, and that's not necessarily where you want them to focus their time on. You'd rather them be comparing the fractions or something. So this was my independent center. What I loved about it was I didn't have to teach new center procedures and directions every week. I taught it at the beginning of the year, and then the rest of the year they were able to be independent. I was able to get a grade for their work. I was able to get a spiral review in there. The kids were super engaged and interested in the activities. They were not getting bored. It did not require a lot of extra things. I mean, sometimes like a center might require a ruler. Sometimes kids did better if they had a fraction bar or some base 10 blocks, but it did not require a whole bunch of extras, which made it easy for me to prep. In fact, it would be really super easy to print, laminate, and have them prepped for the whole year during the summer and not have to write whole lesson plans for centers, be on the search constantly for a center activity to cover a certain skill throughout the year. I found that to be very time consuming in how I used to do it. So those are my center rotations. I'm going to be talking tomorrow about how I organize them, how I put them together. So make sure you tune in for the next video. But I did want to let you know that if you are watching this video today, which is Wednesday the 27th, I have gone ahead and discounted my Math Center bundles for the date of June 27th and June 28th. So if you're watching them now, you can grab that deal. Otherwise, I always offer a discount on bundles, and so it's always a better deal to grab the bundle than the individual sets. I always give you a break any day, okay? So I hope you enjoyed getting a little look at what Math Center activities I use in my classroom. I'll be back with a new video about how I get these independent math centers organized for my students. All right, bye guys.